Hello, you fanatical elves. This is the Oracle Speaks. I am the Village Elliot, your host. It is time for the Bengals to play the Cleveland Browns. It's normally a huge game, but today it's kind of meaningless for both teams, in theory at least, because the Bengals are out of the playoffs and the Browns are in the playoffs no matter what the outcome of the game. But on the other hand, it is always a spite game. It's quite a rivalry. Although I'll tell you this: when I was a kid, the leagues were not yet unified. There was the American Football League, where the Cincinnati Bengals played, and the National Football League, of course, where the Browns played. And we kind of looked at it like, wow, that's extra football. What a great idea that is. Our old coach, Paul Brown, was the coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, sort of like the coach slash owner, which you can't really have these days, but at that time it was okay. And we thought that was awesome. We did not have animosity to Paul Brown, generally speaking. We knew that there was kind of a rift between the star fullback of the Cleveland Browns, Jim Brown, the Hall of Famer, the GOAT, and he and Paul Brown had their differences, but we recognized the greatness. You know, it's kind of like, in today's terms, it's kind of like Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. New England fans didn't really hate Bill Belichick. They loved Tom Brady, but they didn't hate Bill Belichick. They recognized greatness in both. And there's a debate about who is really more responsible for winning, but obviously both contributed. So, we really, Browns fans, wanted the Bengals to do well. We wanted them to win. If we could watch the games on TV, we did. And it wasn't until the leagues merged and they started to play each other that the rivalry actually began. So we don't hate, or at least us old fans that remember how it was back in the day, we didn't hate the Bengals the same way that they hated us. We don't hate the Bengals, or at least I don't, the same way that I hate the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of course, I respect the Pittsburgh Steelers. Remember that the Rooney family voted against the move of the Browns to Baltimore, the old Browns. The Baltimore Ravens are, for me, the most hated organization in the NFL. The Steelers are the greatest rival, the respected rival, and the Bengals are, uh, not quite the same animosity. They're an Ohio team, and if it can't be the Browns to win the division, I'd just as soon it be the Bengals. I guess that's kind of the way I feel about it. I hope you will forgive me for that feeling. But anyway, it's still a rivalry, a big rivalry game normally, and we want to win. It's just the way it is. We want to win that game. And it's like maybe playing your crosstown rivalry in high school. You still have a lot of friends on that team, but you want to beat them. That's the way it is. We want to win that game. It turns out that our big stars, Myles Garrett and Joe Flacco, will not be playing. I did want to say that there's some misinformation out there for those of you who are handicapping the game. It was announced by one of the local TV stations that in particular there were some late minute or last minute announcements that two Browns players would not be playing. And let me boot that up for you. That Greg Newsome the second and Jerome Ford are not playing. That's only 50% correct. Jerome Ford is playing, it's Mike Ford that's not playing according to the Browns website. So we've got to go with the Browns website over the local TV sports station that has said that uh, Jerome Ford is out. I believe that that is inaccurate and that we have to go with the Browns website. Mike Ford is out. Greg Newsome the second is out. So there are two defensive backs that are out. Two guys out at the last minute on defense. What does that mean? Well, I guess I think that that means that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to probably air it out. They like to throw the ball anyway. They had probably one of the top passing attacks anyway at the beginning of the season with Joe Burrow, who I think is one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. And I actually took some flack for saying that on the air live in our last Fanatical Elves broadcast on Thursday. But yeah, no, I believe Joe Burrow really is probably the top quarterback in the NFL. I also like Josh Allen a lot, and I have a great deal of respect for Lamar Jackson as well. I just think Joe is more accurate than anybody else in the NFL, and I just think he's really a great passer. And it's unfortunate that he got injured this season. We'll not know how this season could have turned out. But it also turns out that the Bengals showed that they were able to scout the backup quarterback position pretty well. They were able to provide, once again, not a franchise quarterback, but Jake Browning has done pretty well. I think we would have to say in the absence of Joe Burrow. And in fact, if you look at his stats, they're about the same. I'm looking at it right now, and Joe Burrow has a completion average of 66.8%. Remember, though, that Joe played on one leg at the beginning of the season. It looked pretty bad, really, against us. He just really wasn't himself. And also against Baltimore, another division game, he just really did not look very good. He has really good receivers, and Jake Browning did pretty well. His completion percentage is 69.9%, right around 70%, which is excellent. I think if Burrow had been healthy, he'd be over 70%, which is kind of scary. And in terms of the rating, Burrow's rating was not that good. 91. Jake Browning is at 96.5%. Even though his completion percentage is very high, Jake has thrown a few more interceptions than you'd like to see. The touchdown to interception ratio is 9-6. That's not really very impressive. So he's been throwing for a reasonable amount of yardage, averaging 222 yards per game. But the interceptions have been higher than you'd really like to see. But for a quarterback that doesn't have very much experience, that's about what you'd expect. Throw some interceptions, but as he gains experience and game reps, that will probably come down. Now, the main problem that they might have on offense is that T. Higgins, who, by the way, is due to become a free agent next season, is listed as questionable. We don't know if he's going to play. And a lot of speculation is that he's not going to make it. He's not questionable. He's doubtful. He's got a hamstring. He did not practice all week long, so I don't know that he's actually going to show up at the post on this afternoon. That's going to hurt them, but on the other hand, they have some reasonably capable backups. One of the guys that was listed on the injury report, also with a hamstring, is Trenton Irwin, who's a pretty good possession receiver. He was able to practice on Friday, so I imagine he'll be full go, and that gives the Bengals at least a credible option to go up against the Browns, who, remember, are -2 defensive backs. And I think, they may just air it out. They still, it looks like, are going to have Jamar Chase. He's been banged up with a bum shoulder, but I think he's going to be able to go. And they still have Tyler Boyd. So they're going to have 3 receiving targets, and then they have a lot of tight ends. They're all healthy, and they have a credible offensive line. They're not superstars on the offensive line, but they're pretty much all healthy. So I think they'll be very credible on offense. I think they'll air it out on the on offense. They will be able to throw against Cleveland, especially with backups and with Myles Garrett not present. All right, I'd like to take a few minutes now for a commercial break. Thank you, everybody, for supporting us, the Fanatical Elves Network, and thank you for our sponsors for keeping us in the ball game. And I'll pause for 5 seconds of my time. And on many of the platforms, it'll be a few minutes of commercials. So buy all of our stuff. Thank you. It'll be 5 seconds. Okay, and we're back. And okay, let's talk a little bit about who the Browns are not going to play. And the primary difference between the Browns against the Bengals and the rest of the league is the Browns are choosing to rest up Myles Garrett. Garrett, of course, has been playing with a shoulder injury. And I think, my opinion that perhaps differs with the conventional wisdom is that the defensive players are worth a lot more than people think. I would say that that the very good defensive players probably, like Myles Garrett, are probably worth about 6 points to the point spread. And I think that the really bad players probably give back. They're probably like maybe 3 points to the other side. That, in other words, if you put a backup player in, that they might give up a field goal worth of points, something like that. And so when you add it all up, week to week, there may not be that much difference. But I think when you subtract a star player, it's going to make a difference in how many points they give up. I think that what's going to happen is that the Bengals are going to have more time to set up in the pocket. They're going to be able to throw the deep ball to Jamar Chase. That is not good. Typically, the opposing defenses try to double cover Chase. You almost have to. And they are able to penetrate the Bengals offensive line, and they only give about 2.5 seconds to get the ball out to Chase. And if that increases to 3 seconds, they're going to be able to complete some passes to Chase. And the result, I think, is that they're going to complete some balls there. And that, I think, is going to be significant. I think they are going to complete some passes and they're going to score. The Browns, on the other hand, are going to play the backup quarterback, Jeff Driscoll, with 1 week of practice. He is familiar with the Stefanski system, but he does not know the Browns' personnel. And he will be forced, I think, to rely on a short passing game with pretty much the standard vanilla plays that he can call from the Stefanski playbook. And I think that he'll have success to some extent, but I also think he'll be susceptible to throwing the ball, where the receiver breaks one way and he throws the ball the other way, and he'll probably get picked off. I think that there will be an opportunity to gain yardage. Um, the Bengals injury list is not nearly as long as the Browns. They will be down at least one defensive back, and let me just find that. Chidobe Awuzie is a very good cornerback. He's out. The Bengals give up a lot of points even when they're healthy, though. They have not had a good defense this year. You'll recall that in the off season that they did not sign three defensive backs. Jesse Bates and Von Bell were guys that were Pro Bowl caliber, and they also did not re-sign Eli Apple, who played almost every down for them last season. So they had three really important pieces of the defensive backfield that did not get re-signed. And even though they had some players that they drafted that would try to take their place, they just didn't really measure up at that same high level. And consequently, I think it's possible to pass against them. And without Awuzie, that's going to make some difference. And so, yeah, I think that there are going to be a lot of passes thrown. I think the Browns are going to continue, even with the backup quarterback. I think they're going to air it out close to 40 times. And definitely the Bengals are going to throw it a lot. I think it's going to be air ball. And I think it's going to be an offensive game. Could be some balls going the wrong way. Could be that there will be some turnovers, maybe a kind of a sloppy game. I tend to not want to handicap the game just because we know so little about how Jeff Driscoll can perform with 1 week. Maybe the success that Joe Flacco had has sort of put the fear of God into me. I would not have thought it was possible to have success with just 1 week of the playbook. I was proven wrong by Joe Flacco. Jeff Driscoll's another guy that's got like 8 or 10 years experience in the NFL. Now I'm thinking, my gosh, anything is possible. These guys are magicians. But on the other hand, I also am questioning how the Bengals are going to respond now that their Super Bowl dreams have been just totally smashed against the rocks. Are they going to mail it in, or are they going to come to play? I don't know. That's very hard to gauge. Therefore, I'm not really keen to, put my money down and bet on it. But on paper, this game really favors the Bengals. Again, the impact of not playing Flacco, not playing Myles Garrett, that should make an enormous difference on the spread, and that should be like a 9-point swing. It really should be. In fact, let me just take a few minutes and see what the spread is today. If you'll forgive me just a minute. Yeah, let's see, what do we got for okay, according to Sportsbook Wire via USA Today, the Browns are 7-point underdogs. 7-point underdogs, and so they get, for home field, that would be 3 points. So we're saying that they would normally be 4 points. Uh, hmm, hmm, hmm. Well, yeah, that's not in. Yeah, I think 7 points. That's a pretty big number to be an underdog. Um, but without Flacco and without Myles Garrett, saying that if they'd had both of those guys, the Browns would be favored by 2 at an away game, and so on a neutral field they would be about 4 or 5 points better than the Bengals. Uh, okay, well, yeah, I still think that that on paper the Bengals should really be a prohibitive favorite in this circumstance. Nevertheless, um, it's hard to predict whether the Bengals are actually going to come to play in this situation. I think it's going to be tough for them to get up for the game given their circumstance, given the very high expectations that they had at the beginning of the year, and given how their season has turned out. They certainly did not get up for the Pittsburgh game where they just really couldn't compete against Pittsburgh. But on the other hand, Pittsburgh makes teams look bad because they're a very strong defensive team. And Pittsburgh, by the way, made good on their game against Baltimore. Baltimore also was in a situation where they did not have to play their regulars, and so they played backups, and they lost to the Steelers, who still didn't score any points. But we'll have to wait until the results of today's contest to see whether the Steelers can make the playoffs or not. I think that they need to have probably Jacksonville has to win because I remember that um, uh, Houston has the tiebreaker over uh, Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken. So they have to wind up being in contention for the same wild card, and then they can knock Pittsburgh out of the playoffs. Let's hope. I think I want that to happen. Well, all right. Anyway, so that's the way I see it. I think that the game is going to be decided through the air. It's going to be an interesting game. I think the Browns still want to win even with their backups. The Bengals, I'm not so sure about, but I believe that they will put more talent on the field than the Browns have by far. And we'll just see how it goes. We'll talk some more after the game. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy the game, everybody, and we'll talk again later. Bye for now.